Hello, everyone. Forest Pokers as we step away from the race for Champions League football for a little bit for a mini podcast on how Nottingham Forest fans view their club when it comes to ticket prices. We'll also discuss the Supporters Trust and a little bit on a visit to Stockley Park and some VAR chat, which I know people hate, but I think this will be interesting in the company of James Bogue, who I think is one of the Trust's board members. Is that right, James?
Yeah. I was elected in January. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, good to have you with us. How are you staying?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. Delighted to be on.
No, good to have you on board. You've been on a member stream. You remember this podcast, so you have been on before. This is your first time in public. Tell us a little bit about the trust in the sense that I think it's fair to say its reputation's needed a bit of rehab over the last few years. I remember a few years ago, people were not thinking, it was a feeling that they weren't holding the club to account. Maybe that still remains, but it feels like the trust's in a better place right now. Talk to us about the trust, the work you do, and I guess also how people can get involved if they want to.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose I've only been doing it a relatively short time. I started as I co-opted in August, and obviously been working and then elected in January. But the trust really formed out of the fact that Fawaz was driving the club to the brink, and obviously having a trust is something like a safe pair of hands in case things go badly wrong. At least there's somebody to sort of manage that situation. So the trust has been born out of that. But obviously now it's not. I don't think that the club's going to go out of business anytime soon, and far from it. So the role of the trust is very much evolving in terms of what it does, and I think the trust have brought quite a few new board members on. There's 10 of us who actually work on a volunteer basis, and really we basically ask our members what they want us to work on each year, and we try and prioritise against that. And what our members primarily want is they want us to hold the club to account, communicate with the club, represent them, get their views on things, and obviously put those views to the club as well. So that's the kind of the main thing that we do. We also do other things like we do some community work. We something for the food bank, but we're also working with the Nottingham Forest Community Trust in terms of doing some work on addiction and stuff like that in the community. We're also very lucky to have a guy called Robert on the board, who's a financial wizard and has got involved in understanding some of the numbers, because if you're anything like me, I don't necessarily understand the numbers to the forensic level. And Rob actually did some work last year when we had the PSR issue, and some of that information that he produced was actually used in the judgment, if you like. Not that it did us any favours necessarily, but at least there was key information that could be used. So we do all sorts of things really. But again, our main priority is to work on behalf of the members and put their views forward and try and protect their interests.
That follows nicely into the survey that you did of members and non-members for their views on mostly ticket prices, memberships, match day experience, how people are viewing it. I think you had about 1,000 respondents when I was looking at the survey.
1,300 actually.
Yeah. 1,300. So that's a good sample size, certainly. I've got some slides, depending on what James says. What were the general takeaways on how people are viewing things? Because when ticket prices come out, we get fairly up in arms. What's the bigger picture among the fan base, do you think?
Well, it doesn't surprise you to probably learn that everyone's pretty happy with life at the minute. I can't see why, but third in the Premiership, FA Cup semi-final and what have you. But I think the main takeaway is that people felt that they were getting value for money. The vast majority of people, there was very people said that they felt the value for money on any of the metrics, which was the season card, the away membership, the My Forest, that they felt that it was a poor value for money. Most people felt it was either fair to excellent. That was the number one takeaway that we had. The number two takeaway is when we actually asked specifically about price increases. You could have viewed that two ways, but it's again, the majority of people were happy for a reasonable price increase. They weren't, it wasn't the majority actually saying that they didn't want a price increase. Oh, you've got it there. They're fantastic.
Got it there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see James. The third. If prices were to change the season card, which they have done, what level of increase would you feel is reasonable? The majority of respondents said 0 or 0 to 5%, and after that it was 6 to 10%, and I think the average came in at 7. So it's probably a little higher than people would have liked. Carol, take it from there, James. I'll just explain.
Well, what I will say is, I'm not Danscape, but I'm probably going to do a little bit of Danscape on you here. If you drill down into the numbers a little bit, if you look at actually who were season ticket holders and their responses on their own, and that was across the members of the trust and the non-members of the trust. Actually, it's not it's not that dissimilar to that, but actually there's more acceptance of price increases a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yes, I've got season ticket value for money here as well. The value of your season card again. So the majority of people, I would think it's about 42% said good value, and about 38% said fair value. So and then excellent value was about 12%. So only about 8% of people felt they were getting poor value for their season ticket.
That's right. So the fact that when the club announced 8.5%, I think we all saw from all the social media reaction, it was quite neutral, wasn't it, really? I think there's a general view that, of football about, people, the prices going up and the dissatisfaction of that. But I don't think there was much dissatisfaction certainly within the season ticket holders themselves, but also generally.
That's from 960 respondents. Sorry, that's the non-members. I took the non-members because it was a bigger sample size, but obviously the data's all out there publicly, I'm sure, James, isn't it? Let me show match day ticket prices. Actually, I'll show membership value for money, how people viewed that. Again, it's about 42% good, fair, and then 25% good, and then about 8% excellent. And the people who think it's poor value for money for their membership is about 23%, something like that, I would say. And I'll also just show match day prices, which kind of rounds off the general picture. Match day prices, fair value, just under 50%. And then again, the only people who found it was poor value is about 12%, something like that. So it goes into the general picture you were painting there around everything around home matches, James. We'll talk about away matches in one second, but home matches, it paints that picture, I guess.
Yeah, it does. And I'd like to point out that also there was a big problem last season, obviously, when they put the prices up across the board at 24%, and also, changed the concessions and the youth membership. There was no real communication with the club at that point, but this year, the actual club invited us to come in, the chairman Asif and Andy, to go in and actually present these numbers and then leave their survey results with the club prior to them actually announcing the season ticket prices. Obviously, they've not announced any other prices yet, but they took this into consideration.
How long prior?
Not that long.
No, that's that will be the issue that people point out. I know that what's the supporters meet board? Is it FAB or something like that? Fan advisory board. They met like the day before.
And that's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and there were complaints that people felt it was a bit of a box ticking exercise. But I'll have to get someone to the club about that. But this is more about the trust. Now, one area where people do have a general more question marks is away membership and away ticketing. I'll just show a couple of slides here. How satisfied are you with away membership? It's about 40% of people are dissatisfied to some degree, 25% neutral, and then only about 30% or so are actually happy with away membership. And then the price scheme, people were not expecting any increase, but I don't think that's really been announced yet unless I missed it. And then away membership value, excellent or good makes up about 40%, 30%, something like that. And then people who are less satisfied, is more prevalent, obviously. What's the kind of consensus among the trust around the away membership and the away ticketing allocations? Because I mean, I'm not a member, but I do see Twitter every away game. It tends to be people saying I've missed out, that kind of thing. How are the trust viewing it?
Well, when I filled my survey in, Matt, I put dissatisfied because I don't get a sniff of an away ticket ever. So I'm naturally dissatisfied I'm not getting a ticket. And I think, you know, there is, from the club's perspective, there's a limited amount of tickets and a lot of people want them. I mean, Forest away sport is the best, isn't it, at the end of the day, in many different ways. But I think it's the availability really, and the fact that they've got a tiered system that is dependent on how long you've been in it, as much as anything else. Obviously, you've got to go to away matches to qualify for certain levels, but it's felt that that's unfair. It just locks people out, and I think that's the main contention, which we have raised with the club. We're also quite surprised to learn that there's kind of no weighting in it, in the sense of it's a kind of a blank ballot every time for those who go into the ballot. So, you know, you can statistically miss out every time on it, rather than, well, somebody's been to 3, so therefore they should have less chance of getting the next one. So, you know, again, we're making representations to the club via the FAB, because that's important to understand that the trust have a member of the board on the FAB, which is what the club actually talk to on a regular basis, and we'll just make representations on that. So, you know, look, we appreciate, you know, demand outweighs outweighs supply, but at the same time, can we please try and find a fairer way of doing it?
So would one way from what you're saying there be, if person X misses out for Fulham away, instead of being potentially in, you know, anywhere on the ballot, maybe next time for Everton away, they are placed higher in the queue and have an increased chance? Is that what you would like to see?
Yeah, I think that's generally when I speak to people, and certainly when I've talked about, we've had feedback from members. They want a fair chance. I think it's not any more complicated than that. But the problem is the fair chance. If it's just from blank every time, is that fair? You can argue both ways, I suppose. But certainly, if you've been to a number of away games, you've still got an equal chance of getting the next one, haven't you?
Yeah, certainly. Will the trust be making any representations around general match day tickets for next season? And I'm getting ahead of myself here, but should we get in the Champions League, will there be representation to try and make sure we're not in an Aston Villa situation where it's £90 to £100 a ticket?
Well, I mean, the club are going to do what the club want to, but we will obviously make those representations. We're actually putting forward. We've got a meeting next week, and we're going to be having 2 kind of thrusts, which is one, we're going to have a team working on the European side of it, which will include the tickets, but also things like travel and arrangements as well. And also an important thing that's coming up is the stadium development as well. So we're going to have another team working on that in terms of communicating with the members, the club, and maybe the non-members as well, of what people, you know, want, what the club are thinking, start that sort of communication going. So clearly, yeah, we want to be in the mix in terms of, you know, understanding what our members want, and then influencing the club as much as we can.
Excellent. We'll talk about VAR in 1 second, but just before, and we'll give you a chance to say any final words on the trust as well. Obviously, just for that, we have to have a word for the Trent navigation. Obviously, just a reminder, you can order off Uber Eats from now. If you want to order pizza from the Big Shed Kitchen, then do that. Obviously, this is just an excuse for me to ask James what his favourite pizza is. Really, what's your favourite pizza, James Bogue?
Spicy meat every time.
Oh, really? Okay, very good, very good. You've got a stronger constitution than me, so I'm
well,
impressed.
I'm not sure I have, Matt, but I like it.
Any final words on the trust that I might have missed? And I'll put either a link or a QR code, depending on my technological skills, on how people can find out more or join if they want. But anything you want to add, James?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I joined the trust is I just wanted to get closer to the club. I mean, it wasn't any more complicated than that. And then I was asked if I wanted to, help on the board, and went from there. But what I've found is that we've got 10 volunteers who get through quite a lot of work at the end of the day, because what we do is, when people can't get a satisfactory answer from a club on something, then we, if they're a member, they come to us, and then we contact the club. We're not a complaints department for the club, let's make that clear. But if they've tried everything else and they're not getting anywhere, we will try and pick it up and communicate with the people we know. But also, we do run a number of things. There's opportunities for members, like we've had some of the youth members, because we've got a youth membership which is free. They actually went on News Round on the BBC talking about how much they love Forest, and that was great. I don't know if you saw that, Matt. So that was great. We were asked by the club everything does happen kind of last minute. I suppose that's the way how PR and press works. I'm not used to it, but so we also got asked for some members to actually go to the club and do videos for a motivational video that we're going to show the players. And that was before the Man City game, so obviously they did a sterling job. But we get involved with the club as well. So it's not just about holding the club to account in terms of trying to make sure that we're looking after our members' interest, but also there's there's involvement the other way. And also we got involved to the manager of the month Nuno celebration, which I actually went to. It was fantastic, just because the fans were there as well to celebrate with him, which I thought was a real class act from the club, really. So there's all those sorts of things. We've also we've contributed to the mascot in terms of financially, but also in terms of getting people to help design it. So the new mascot for the women's team, football team, but also the netball team. And that's the other thing, we're evolving as trusts, as because the owner's so ambitious. There's all sorts of things happening, netball, women's football, and we're trying to juggle and saying, right, okay, how do we prioritize that and what do we need to do? So we're learning as we go along. And I was actually talking to somebody in the club about this, and he says, well, you're not the only ones. So, so So we do lots and lots of stuff. Joining the trust is I think just a step getting close to the club. The trust isn't about the danger to the club in the sense of it going out of business anymore. It's more about how you can get involved and influence things. So.
Excellent. Just before we let James go, we discuss VAR all the time on here. I don't think any of us are particular fans of it. I don't know what James's views are. Were they influenced, James, by your trip to Stockley Park? Answer that second, actually. Tell us what you did at Stockley Park, obviously, and what you learned, and then has it affected your experience or perspective, I should say, on VAR?
It's not overly. But I'll tell you about the trip first in a couple of minutes, if that's all right with you, Matt. They basically asked for each club, one of the fan groups for each club to represent the club at Stockley Park, and we went down at the end of January. Actually, it's quite a while ago. And the whole purpose of the exercise is, I think, the PGML and the Premier League are very conscious that VAR is getting a really bad rap. And people are getting fed up with it. And I think this is their first kind of stab at trying to communicate about what the VAR is, what it's trying to do, how they're trying to improve. So I think that was the basis of the day. So we went down and we had a presentation from some kind of quite senior Premier League figures in terms of on the statistics of VAR, which naturally were obviously proving that they're actually getting more decisions right and things like that. We then had some lunch, and then we went in. Then we were shown into the VAR training centre, and we didn't know this was going to happen. But there was Howard Webb gave a short presentation for 25 minutes, which spoke very eloquently, very well. And I suppose a takeaway from it was that they are frustrated because there is an organisation called IFAB. I don't know if you've heard of it. I hadn't really heard of it. Yeah, I hadn't, but I do now. Who kind of blocking what they consider to be things that are going to make communication better with the supporters at the ground, but also outside of the ground, because they're not allowed, for example, to play the chatter between the officials in the VAR centre and actually at the ground. And they feel that would be a benefit, that if people could hear more of that, then that would help communications. And there was one or two other things that they kind of were frustrated that IFAB were being very slow at kind of getting through or not considering. I think the main thing that Howard Webb said, and he made a really strong point on this, was that, VAR was sold wrong. And it was sold wrong in the sense it was going to get every decision right. And he says his point was that because the laws of the game, some of them are very subjective, then, that isn't ever going to be possible. It's just about trying to get more right rather than getting everyone right. And so he felt that communication, they start off on the wrong foot. Whether you agree with that or not is another matter. So, and sitting at the back of the room, there was some referees. So there was Stuart Attwell, Chris Kavanagh, one or two others. Yeah, you smile. It gets a little bit better. And they were also asked, what were their thoughts on the stadium announcements, which is obviously something that's going to kind of be rolled out. And to be fair, they're saying they're terrified, absolutely terrified of it, because what happens if they say the wrong team and get it wrong on the mic? They look complete idiots, or more idiots than they do sometimes anyway. But and then it was quite a surprise, because then what they do, they split us into groups, and each group got allocated a referee, and the referee then just talked through how they operated the VAR. If you've got time, I'll do that for a minute, Matt. Mm-hmm. So you've seen the setup. There's 3 sets of 2 screens. The VAR official sits in the middle, and then he's got an assistant on the left, and he's got the guy who manages the camera angles and replays on his right. And the 2 screens, one is playing live. The one below is got different pictures on, which is on a 3-second, kind of different camera angles on, which is on a 3-second delay, so they can quickly look and see it 3 seconds after if they want to. And then what they've got, actually, it's really funny. They've got a red button and they've got a green button, really big buttons. And the green buttons, if they hit it, if they want the camera, the video assistant on their right to actually play something back or find a particular angle, which they don't tend to use because he's next door to them, so they talk. Yeah. The red one, if they hit it, is that then puts some immediate communication with the match officials. And around the screen, a big red border's there, so they now know that they're talking to the match officials. And at that point, they say, we're reviewing a potential red card, or reviewing a penalty, or reviewing an offside, whatever it is. And they're both talking at that point. Yeah. So, yeah, that was really fascinating. Can you guess the referee who got allocated?
Well, it's going to be Attwell, isn't it?
It was, yes. So, he spoke very well and explained that to us.
Were you wearing that Forest top, by the way, or were you incognito?
I was incognito, Matt. And then they asked for a volunteer. So me being me, I kind of stuck my hand up, and Mr. Attwell said, "Oh, volunteer, fantastic! And who are you?" And I said, "James Bogue." He said, "What club?" And I went, "Nottingham Forest." And he went, and then basically I had to go on the VAR, and they played a game from when I think even Stuart Dyche was manager of Burnley. It was that older game, and I had a 5-minute spell on that, doing that, and they obviously picked the game that had got some incidents in it. So I basically recommended the referee review a red card for company, because he about garroted somebody, quite frankly, and then there was a shout for a penalty.
Yeah.
And quite amusingly, at the end, Stuart Attwell said, he says, "Well, you actually did really well there." Yeah. So I said, "Well, yeah," and I said, I would tell the Forest fans you're actually quite a nice guy. I said, "But then they'd all end up hating me, so I'm not going to do that." So that was quite amusing. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they're humans, aren't they? And it was, humanise them a bit, but it doesn't really. If you ask my overall view on it, I'm still unsure. There's too many decisions, that go wrong. I mean, why we're not sending the Everton lad off? How can you miss that, given all the chances they've got to review and see that? How are we not sending Van Dijk off, or at least picking it up for his elbow or his flailing arm, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, there's lots of examples. So I think, and the other big one was probably the biggest one, is the delay. I think that if until they sort the delays out, it's and it becomes more seamless, I think everyone's not going to like it. But that's just my view.
Excellent. Right. And we shall leave it there because I wanted to keep this under 30 minutes or so, which we've done nicely. Off the beaten track a little bit, I appreciate. But if you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. You can become a channel member like James, which would be great. You can sign up for Patreon. You can give us a lovely 5-star review on iTunes or Apple or Spotify, or you can get your podcast merchandise, forest-focus.co.uk, if you're interested in that. Now, depending on the sequencing of when this comes out, the plan in my head is that we'll be back tomorrow with Chris McGuane, I should say, who's the head of Forest Academy, in conversation with Nick Marshall, who's the deputy head of Liverpool's Academy. And people of James's generation and mine will know that Nick used to run Forest Academy for many years with great success. But like I say, he's deputy at Liverpool's Academy now. So we had a good chat about what it is to run academies, the pressure of it, the changing face of academy football, the changing face of kids, the changing face of social media, and how that influences them. And some interesting chat around all that. So if you appreciate something else off the beaten track, then that will be a good one, I'm sure. So do check that out. And then we'll be back probably on Sunday. It's a really weird week, as you can probably appreciate. When this one comes out, we didn't do a post-match show on the Everton game, but we will have a Spurs preview and an opposition preview, hopefully, at some point before Monday. So appreciate everyone's patience this week. And like I say, if you enjoyed this one, do hit like. James, thank you very much for that. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, and yeah, enjoy it and keep up the good work with the podcast. Enjoy it immensely, and I know lots of people who do that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Thanks for everyone's company today. If we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.
Thank you.